users. Why are you missing users? Oh, you have to find them. Look at that, you don't have my notes anymore. That's more exciting for me. And more surprise for you. So yeah, you know that your code is great because you wrote it, but you need users. And you need, who else said something? Over here. All right, time. You need time? I cannot help you with that, sir. I believe there is a talk later this afternoon about how to build a TARDIS. Perhaps you would be interested in that, but you are in the wrong place. So why are you the only one using it? Well, there are some possibilities here. Maybe you are technically superior, like the Betamax, but you actually decided to charge something for your time and effort, and it's a whole lot more than what the VHS player was costing. Or your Betamax only holds 1 hour instead of 2, and so while you might make really good video displays, you're going to lose. Just because you are the best doesn't mean that you win users. You might be a lovely Dvorak keyboard, which is arguably faster, and the guy with no users is like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Arguably faster, efficient, easier, all of these things, and yet how many of you are using one? That guy. Did not catch on. So let's talk about how not to be these many things that perhaps were really good ideas and yet did not work out. And this is like just a handful of things that came to the top of mind when I made this slide. And you can see, just because you've done something awesome before doesn't mean that your next project is going to be super awesome. A lot of these companies have done really successful things. Juiced was created by the founders of Skype and Kazaa. So sometimes things work out, sometimes things don't. Let's really talk about how not to be the thing that you've never even heard of at all because they didn't even have enough success for you to know that they failed. That's an entire other problem. So let's begin with why you're here. What are you even doing with your project? Have you set some goals? Have you defined what success means for your project? If you don't know that, it's going to be hard to figure out what direction to go and where to lead your community, or even where to find a community, because if you can't tell them what you want to do, they actually might tell you what you're going to do, and that's an entire other talk for another day. So your goal might be the very basic open source goal. Fix a problem, scratch the itch, the cliche, right? Noble goal, probably don't need the rest of this talk until that's something bigger. It might be to get an A in your class. Again, noble goal. You probably don't need a whole lot of the rest of this. But maybe your goal is more users than developers. Maybe it's to gather contributors. Maybe it's world domination, in which case you're going to need a whole lot more. Maybe it's to build a TARDIS so that you can get more time to build your next project. Aim for the stars, whatever you want. Along the way here, though, you should also be considering why you're choosing open source, because that's going to mean something else for your goals and something else for what success looks like for you. It's a little cliche to say, but it also helps to remember that there were lots and lots of failures along the way to all of the projects you see that are highly successful. Not only was Sony's first product a rice cooker, it really just was a rice burner. It didn't actually cook the rice. It just made you a pile of brown, inedible disaster. So first things first, community. That's kind of what we're here for. That's what we're all about here in open source landia, is community. Large projects often have designated community managers, which if you ask 10 people, you will probably get 10 different definitions of exactly what a community manager is supposed to do with their day. But in many cases, it's that person or that group, it could be a group of people's job, to help guide a lot of the rest of the stuff I'm going to talk about, in addition to the direction of the actual project and the code roadmap. But before you can just work on community, you have to know who that is. And in a lot of cases, you actually have two communities. You have your user community and your contributor community. So when you're working out the plan for the rest of what you're going to do, you need to know who you're talking to. And sometimes it could be both. Or sometimes it could be almost double the work if the Venn diagram of your users and developers has a very narrow overlap. And that might be part of your definition of success. I think that's less common in open source. I think a lot of the people who are working on these projects are the people who are also using them, but sometimes they are simply people who have an interest in making success for the people who do need the project. One good example is mailing lists. You probably need at least two, a user list and a contributor list. And if you think of the projects that are not yours that you are a part of in open source, they probably have even more, lots and lots of mailing lists for specific groups and so forth. I have done the majority of my work in the Fedora project, which I don't actually know how many mailing lists we have. I don't think I want to know. I don't want to count. that might be an entire separate problem. You might have two blogs, one for your users and one for your contributors, because the content is not necessarily of interest to both of them. What you would post on one is not going to be exciting for the other. We're actually dealing with this right now in Fedora. We launched Fedora Magazine a year or so ago, and it's this constant debate about what is the right content for that. Is Fedora Magazine for the users? Is it for the contributors? Is it for both? And how you communicate matters. You do have to communicate with your communities. That is pretty paramount to this whole process. Defaulting to open is hard for a lot of people. It doesn't really come naturally. Since about kindergarten, after they stopped telling you that you had to share everything, then somewhere after that you're like, no, we don't talk to each other anymore. And it gets a lot harder to collaborate. Sometimes being a dictator is the easy way to go. That doesn't mean that it's the right way to go. It's not really the open source way to go. As many smarter people have said before me, surprise is the opposite of engagement. If you are surprising your community, they are not an engaged community. When you are open with people, you avoid surprising them. You keep them in the loop. Because nothing is going to kill your new contributor's desire to participate faster than surprise. It's going to make them feel excluded, like the opposite of community, like they're the guy standing over in the corner of the basketball game not actually getting the ball. Building community means talking to your community, being a part of your community, having those conversations in public, and as few as possible privately. So make it easy for them. There are all sorts of tools out there. There's IRC, obviously. There are assorted mailing list tools. There's HyperKitty, which is a project to give you both the joys of a mailing list and the joys of a forum all at once. So if you have people who like one, it shows up in the other, and beauty of crossing. There are a couple of tools that do that sort of thing. So now that you've got all your community people caring, make it easy for them to continue caring. Figure out the best tools for your community. They're not the same ones for everyone. And there are endless tools for sharing your code, for your project management, your communication. Remember, it's all about less surprise, because when you have contributors who are enjoying themselves, that means that they are engaged in your project. They are interested in your goals. They share your mission. That means that they're active, they're making contributions, and that's how we get back to success. That's how we get to meet your goals that you set back in the beginning. So now how do we do all that? Well, marketing. It's a dirty word. We don't like to say that word around here, do we? You have to tell people what you're doing, though. Nobody psychically knows that you wrote great code and shows up to use your project. It is never, ever going to happen, which is why the title of this talk was, If You Build It, They Won't Come. Your users are not the Psychic Friends Network. But marketing, such a dirty word. So we're going to call it cupcakes, so that you don't feel uncomfortable on Sunday morning talking about marketing. We're going to talk about cupcakes, because everybody likes cupcakes. There are many ingredients to your cupcake plan. Always better to build a cupcake plan on numbers, because 1 cup of flour and 2 cups of flour are not the same thing. You need to know what you're dealing with. So user information, statistics, data, know who your users are, what they need, and how you can meet those needs for them. So let's talk about a little bit of Marketing 101. This is just a brief list. This is not an exhaustive list of your marketing tasks, but it's the basic entry level. Here's where we're going to start so that we can go find ourselves some users, some more contributors, meet your goals. You need to figure out the implementation of your plan. Which of these tasks is most important based on that data? That's where you start. This list is in no particular order, but I think in 2016 your website is probably where you should start, and there are a lot of bad ones. But I think that Inkscape actually is doing a really good job of it. First of all, it tells me what it does. And I cannot tell you how many times I have tried to find a piece of software and somebody says, oh, I think X works. And so I go to X's website and then I look at it and I'm like, I don't know if this meets my needs, because there is nothing on this page that tells me what your software does. Not a single sentence. No idea. If I'm lucky, it tells me how I can go install it. And so now I'm faced with the choice of, do I trust the friend who recommended X, who thinks that it probably works, or did they just want me to stop talking about my problems? Inkscape's site also has clear places for users and developers, the first two columns under the big banner. You know where you want to go if you are coming to be a part of the Inkscape project. It has obvious links for common tasks. I want to download it. Oh, look, there's the download link. This has pretty much everything that I want all software websites to be, which makes sense because Inkscape is design software, so I would hope that the designers had kind of gotten this right. So after you got your website under you, let's talk about social media, which is a little more comfortable than the dirty M word, and we don't have to talk about cupcakes anymore. So first of all, I highly recommend that your project social media is not your social media, because at some point, ideally, you have a highly successful project and you would like to be talking about your project, and if you would like to tweet about what your cute puppy did over the weekend, your users really don't care. And so you might as well start from the beginning and have those as separate channels. I think a lot of people make the mistake of simply talking about their project on their personal social media, which is a good thing. Talk about what you're working on, but your project social media and its goals and what's new in your project should be a separate channel. I think on a much larger scale, a really good recent example of this is Chris Hardwick had the Nerdist handle everywhere. And then Nerdist Industries has grown into this empire. And so finally they were like, hey, Chris, we're gonna need to, you got to go get your own handle. And so now he has, I think, at Chris Hardwick most places, and Nerdist is for the media empire. Also, as a side note to that whole separation of self and project, the sentence, my opinions are my own, is kind of meaningless, so just stop putting that crap on your profile. The most important thing that you can do with your social media is to be responsive. You cannot just set up a Twitter account, forget that it is there, and ignore everyone who says anything about your project. There are tools to help you do this. I like Hootsuite. There are lots of others. One of the handy things about Hootsuite is you can say, if my project is Gluster, tell me every time someone mentions Gluster. And so then every time someone rants about Gluster, you can get on there and say, oh, I see you're having a problem. I think I can help you. Here's what you should do. This just helped us. There's a fun new book. If you go over to the Expo Hall, go by the No Starch booth. If you have kids who are interested in Minecraft, they have a new book called Learn to Program with Minecraft, which is pretty much all the words my 6-year-old wants in the world, all in one title. But the Linux instructions are specifically for a Raspberry Pi. And I'm like, but, I could go get one and get some cables and plug it up. But the Linux box is right here. Surely we can just make this, it's just Linux. We can make this work, right? We couldn't make this work. And so we tweeted at the guy. We found the author. There he was. He's like, yeah, I'm working on that. There was an exchange of information. In contrast, if you ever tweet at Subway, they have no interest in your existence. They don't care whether you're eating their sandwiches or what you're doing with them. I could just go down the list of Delta. Delta will help you. If you complain about Delta, they will solve your problems on Twitter faster than calling Delta. So there's your recommendation for if you're flying back to the East Coast and you don't know how you're going to get home tonight, you tweet at Delta Assist. Sorry, I could ramble about the Twitters all day. Gathering metrics. Find out what's happening. It's not going to help you if you're like, I think we had 100 followers last year. Now we have 102. That's like growth, right? Find out if anyone is engaging with you. Numbers are there to help you. And again, there are tools like Hootsuite that do this for you. Facebook has insights built in. There are free ways to start out before you can start paying. You can also pay Hootsuite exorbitant amounts of money to tell you more information. And finally, this is the short list of the social media that most of us are probably hitting on a regular basis. But there could be cases where you might need to be serving your users, your future contributors, in some other social media. For example, there are a number of countries, China in particular, that have their own social media networks. If you are creating software that primarily serves a geography that has its own social media, you should get onto that one. Or, for a lot of projects, Instagram probably seems like a weird place to go, unless you're Inkscape. This is the Inkscape hashtag on Instagram. There might be some other social media where your people are, so be a little creative, figure out where your people are, go meet them there. Make it easy for them to be a part of your life. This is just a little snapshot of the metrics that come out of Hootsuite. This is not any actual data. This is just their sample shots, but to show you what you can easily get for free out of Hootsuite. So next, collateral. These are some of my favorite collateral pieces for the sake of having a slide that we've done for Fedora. But what I really loved about this was that this was aimed at engaging new users, which is a significant Fedora challenge at this point. We can come to Scale and other Linux fests, and everybody already knows what Fedora is, and either you already have used it or you're not going to use it. There's only so much more engagement that we're going to reach here. But we took these to South by Southwest Interactive Festival, where there were a lot of photographers and musicians and designers and other people working on different things. I think there were actually a couple more in this series. And so what this did was, it was not all about Fedora. It actually gave them a list of the tools that were relevant to their interests to get them interested in free software, all of which, of course, also works on Fedora. And so the reason for collateral is it's kind of like Paper. Paper in 2016, why are we doing this? But think about how long this weekend has been. And are you going to go home tomorrow and remember everybody that you saw on the expo floor and every talk and everything that you wanted to remember? Nope, you're not going to. I do a lot of conferences a year, and I have forgotten way more than I have remembered. But if there's something that I really want to remember later, I pick up the postcard in their booth or their brochure or at least their business card so that later I can go, oh, I wanted to know more about that. I wanted to talk to that guy. Paper still has its place in a lot of our lives, even here in the future in 2016. If nothing else, there is the currency of open source that we often call stickers. This is actually my previous laptop. This is where we are now. The one in the picture ended up 3 layers deep before we were done. I don't know many successful projects now that don't have stickers. It's kind of what we do around here. There's not much else to say about that except you should have some stickers because somebody's going to ask you for them. Everybody's going to ask you for them. In fact, now I've started to see in the last couple of years at conferences there are increasingly people carrying around binders like Pokemon trading cards of stickers, and they're like, oh, so I have this one that they only made for OSCON in 2013. I will trade you for your EFF sticker from last, yeah. Totally happening. I mean, it's like 3rd grade all over again. The other currency of open source is T-shirts. I saw someone tweet yesterday with the Scale 14X hashtag, I'm at 21 shirts, can anyone beat that? And as a step further beyond that, these are pictures from the CentOS Shirt Friday hashtag. They, on Fridays, have people post pictures of themselves wearing their CentOS T-shirts, of which there are clearly many. This is a small selection of them. So now we're talking about conferences and booths, and you're going to have to talk to people, which sometimes is even scarier than the cupcakes. You can give all of these things away, your T-shirts, your stickers, all of your collateral, but you're going to have to interact with people because it doesn't help to give them a sticker with a cute character on it and then tomorrow they don't know what that character was for. It helps to have an interaction. But what that interaction is could vary. You could stand up here and give a talk, which is super helpful for finding new people. Tell them in your talk description, I am solving this problem. Here's how I'm doing it. Come to the talk. And I do recommend, if you're not accustomed to the talk giving, to reading an assortment of blog posts out there about how to write your talk proposals, because I have also sat on the proposal review committees, and the number of talk proposals that I have read that are, my project is good, I want to talk about it. Literally. You get this. No. Write a good description. Tell us why people should care. Then they will come, and you will have contributors and users, and you'll meet your goals. More interestingly, think of places that are not necessarily FOSS conferences, if that is relevant to your goals. Like I mentioned, we took Fedora to South by Southwest. We've gone to Maker Faire and education events to reach those separate audiences that are not simply the open source crowd that we see every day. We've gone to music events. Perhaps it's most relevant to you to hold a hackathon or a series of hackathons, or get on meetup.com, hold meetups, talk to people. Or, if you need to start small, videos, create tutorials, tell people what you're doing, show them how to do it. Do not make hour-long videos. Stop that stuff too. Make short videos. Nobody wants to watch an hour of your software on YouTube. So again, all of that, not an exhaustive list of cupcake tasks. Getting really good. I'm going to go back to work, and every time I try to say marketing, it's going to come out as cupcake. People are going to be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Be creative. That's what it comes down to. Maybe you are not the creative cupcake baking type of person, which is why you need to find yourself some writers and designers to contribute to your project. All of these people exist. They are very useful. You should value them. It turns out your roommate's English degree is useful after all. And you do need both of these because in the same way that most programmers are not good designers and most designers are not necessarily good writers, and like people have strengths for a reason. Nobody is good at all of the things. And I doubt any of you are massive corporations, but I would like to show you ones where we take the most schadenfreude and watching fail. So this is what happens when you don't have a good writer reviewing your work. Tell me when you spot what's wrong with this picture. That guy found it. What is the category that Walmart chose to sell their wares under? That's what happens when non-writers get to write words. It's not okay. The other suggestion I would make is that when you are describing what your project does well, that's what you should be describing. Tell me why your project is good, why your software is good, and never mention the other ones. Because there's a tendency to say, my project is like Inkscape, but it does this differently. Well, now all you've done is tell me that everybody knows what Inkscape is, nobody knows what yours is, and so maybe I should just go check out Inkscape. And I waffled on whether to show this, but I haven't watched this video in a lot of years, and it's one of my favorites. This is from Oracle World a few years ago. I hope the audio works. Do I have to actually click play on you? Oh, you can't hear him. So what this is clipped together every time Larry Ellison said Red Hat in his keynote at Oracle World. So what you can't hear is Red Hat, Red Hat, Red Hat, Red Hat, Red Hat, and it ends with awkward laughter. You can look this up on YouTube. Larry Ellison, Red Hat, Oracle World. Don't refer to the people that you are competing with or the things that you would like to be better than. It's not helping your case. Next up, let's talk about, now we're just going to watch Larry eternally with no audio. That's awesome. All right, let's talk about UX and UI, which this slide got deleted, so that's neat. I'm going to pretend to remember all of the words that I had written on here. There were a handful of tools that I wanted to recommend to you, and I don't know where this slide went, and that's a little distressing. Pencil is one. Pencil is for prototyping and making diagrams. What's interesting is none of these tools have good websites, which I think is kind of hilarious. Wireframes are super handy. There are countless tools out there to help you do all of these things, but you are likely not a UX or UI expert, and so you should also find one of those in addition to your new writer friend and designer friend. Your designer friend may be an expert in these things, and if anybody would like to know what that list of tools was, you can email me, and I will find what the heck happened to this slide. So your next writer friend is going to be your documentation friend. Because much like all of those websites that won't tell me simply what the heck their project does, there are plenty of them that won't tell me how to use it once I have installed it to figure out what it does. One, possibly the worst example that has vexed me to this day was a piece of software that I knew did exactly what I wanted to do. I just didn't know how to make it happen. And so I went to their website and I clicked documentation, and it took me to about 6 paragraphs about the history of why they decided to make this piece of software, which is not documentation in any way, shape, or form. Again, you might have 2 different types of documentation. Contributor documentation, how do I help you? And user documentation, how do I use this thing that you made? Good documentation is a very specific skill set, and I'm not at all biased because I started out in technical documentation. Recruit people who are good at it, because you've read bad documentation. You have tried to figure out how to do something and gone, that is not it. You know what happens, so find people who can help you write good docs. You are not your user, and that is really why you should not be the one writing the documentation. If you are the one closest to your project, closest to your code, closest to what you think that it's supposed to be doing, you are the last person who should be telling anybody else how to do it. You need to find somebody else to learn how to use what you have created so that they can explain to someone else how to do it, because it's obvious to you, because it's in your head. You made it. You are not your user. Find someone else to help you with that. In particular, focus on what is the first 15 minutes of a new user's experience like. Is it terrible? You should probably fix that. One of my favorite ones, I seem to have lost several slides, and I apologize, is if you go look at PHP's documentation, they do something really cool, which is allow for comments. And so you can be using the PHP documentation and go, oh, I can do that better, and then you can leave a comment as to how it works better. Now, the downfall of this is there are a couple of pages in there that have like 400 bajillion comments, and nobody's going to sift through all that. So there may be a model in which some curation of the comments is useful, but I think that is super helpful on most of the pages. And overall, for all of this, the one thing that I super want everybody to remember is to respect the non-code contributions. Respect your writer and your designer and your documentation person and your UX expert. Those people are just as important to your project as the people writing the code. Because everybody always thinks that their piece of the project or their piece of the company, that their role in whatever they're working on is the most important. The coders say there's no software if I don't write it. And the marketing people say nobody's going to know about it if I don't tell them about it. And the documentation person says nobody can use it if I don't tell them how. And at a company, you've got the lawyers and the HR people and all these people, and everybody thinks that they're critical of the process. The reality is all of them are. And all of them working together is what's going to lead you to your eventual success. And that is the thought that I would like to leave you with. So thank you for getting up on your Sunday morning and coming to hang out. Are there any questions? Any particular piece anybody wants to talk about more? Yeah. So in the list of slides that got deleted, I don't know what happened. So this is the first time I've tried to use slides.com, so what I'm saying here is perhaps they could use better documentation. Or better code, or better a whole lot of things. I thought I'd try something new, so that worked out well. There is a website actually specifically dedicated to showcasing good open source project websites. And in an awesome world, I would have it in my notes. My email address is ruth@redhat.com. I am really easy to find, and so if I cannot RUTH, ruth@redhat.com, because my last name is spelled Suehle, and nobody should have to spell that. So that's why I got that address. If you email me, I will find that website again and let you know what it is. And I recommend never using slides.com. We'd have been here about 10 more minutes if it hadn't eaten all my slides. Any other? You had a question? It's hard. Oh, it's so hard. Like, you would think that if those people are out there, they're going to come work on the big projects, you know, the Linux distributions and whatnot. And even those big projects have trouble finding the good designers who are using open source tools. Red Hat has trouble hiring designers who use open source tools. But I think, so one thing you could do is go to those projects, because I think that the people using those tools are also likely to be flocking to those places. Go to places like this website that hopefully I will find again someday for open source websites. Talk to people on Twitter, talk to people on Facebook. I am sure, I don't know, but I am assuming because there's a Facebook group for everything, that there's a Facebook group for open source designers. Go say, hey, I'm looking for help. Go hang out. The Liberated Pixel Project, I believe is the full name, of people who are making free and open source art assets for games. And there are a couple of other websites that are places where people post free and open source Creative Commons licensed assets for whatever you need art for. Go find where the people are and say, hey, I got this thing going on. I would love to have contributors. What's that? Oh, you're right. I saved the file as a PDF. Let's see where it went. High five to the husband if he's right. Any other questions? So this will narrow it down enough for you. If you care enough, you will figure it out. It was an open source tool for collaborative documents that was not LibreOffice or OpenOffice. That makes it a short list. But they did help me on Twitter, so I don't want to make them super angry, because they did try to help me. It never did work out, so it would change lines in my document. Like, I would close it, and then when I opened it again, things would have changed. I'm like, that is not helping, especially in a spreadsheet. Does anybody have, are there things that you think that your project or a project is doing really well that you want to tell other people about? Does everybody really just want to go to In-N-Out for lunch? That's what I want. Yeah. If you are going to try something, oh, hey, look, I found the rest of my slides. So this is actually sorry, I will answer your question. Can you rephrase your question? I got a little excited about finding my slides. So you want to learn how to write documentation, is what you're saying. So I don't know of any projects that are going to outright kick you out for attempting to write documentation. So a good place to start is writing some and then getting feedback. Find an established project that has good documentation people available who can give you guidelines. There are plenty of style guides out there. There's plenty. If that's the thing that you want to learn to do, is to write technical documentation well, there are all sorts of books and websites about that. And there are lots of communities that would be willing to help you build that skill, just in the same way that if I'm a new developer, I could go to OpenHatch and contribute some small, bite-sized bugs, and somebody's going to help me. That's how this community thing works, right? So this is a whole book, a study about the success of open source software. And what's cool about this slide is, even though I don't usually put a lot of words on slides, I did this time, and so you can actually just read the words that I was going to tell you about what success means in all of these open source projects. So this is based on slightly older data, because the book came out in, I think, 2012, and they studied SourceForge up to, I think it's like 2009 data, but I suspect that in general the information is still good. 37% of projects were abandoned after the first release. 46% were abandoned before they even got to release. That is not a supreme rate of resounding success. That didn't go as well as I hoped. I totally know how to use software, guys. And this was a list of characteristics that they found that were reflected in successful open source projects across the board that like I said in the beginning, they had clearly defined goals. They knew what they wanted to do, what problems they wanted to solve, what success would look like for them. They knew what their users looked like. We didn't really talk about this, but a lot of companies in particular, and so successful software projects in the same way, create user profiles. A sample person, we'll name her Jessie, and she is probably about 25 years old, and she lives in a major metropolitan area, and if you're making cupcakes, you go down into the details of, like, sometimes these get super detailed. Jessie has 3 cats, and she likes to read books and goes mountain biking on the weekends, whatever. But you can read all sorts of things about writing user profiles for trying to meet the needs of the people that you are interested in meeting. Goals, good project communication, modular architecture, but what all of this came down to was a good leader who was good at communicating the project's vision. That was the supreme single item they found that led to project success. And that means that somewhere in here we're going to have your URL. This is more good statistics, although this is the expensive way. This is results from Bitergia that we use for a lot of the Red Hat projects, and it tells you things like your mailing list contributions are down 47% this week. What the heck happened? Or you have 40 billion new Twitter followers. What happened? The what happened is up to you. They just give you the numbers. Yell if you see an exciting slide that wasn't there before. Hey, there we go. So there's your UX and UI tools. Again, all of them have terrible websites, and I don't know why. Pencil for prototyping your GUIs, browser shots. So I'll go back to that one. FreeMind for creating site maps and mind maps. Browser shots will show you what your website looks like in possibly every browser and platform combination you could want. And so just for fun, here's what redhat.com looks like in Lynx 2.8 on Windows 7. Just in case that's one of your user profile's likely scenarios, which it is really not. I might have lost your, there's the PHP user-contributed notes. I think I might have lost that website forever, which is sad because it was really good, and now I'm going to spend the entire time in the airport today Googling to try to find it again. Bummer. I will hunt it down. You email me, and I will find that website, because it is really cool. And what was even further interesting about it was not only was it a lot of really well-designed websites, it was a lot of open-source projects that I'd never heard of, and I was like, oh, what's that do? Oh, that one looks good, too. So again, just because you made a pretty website doesn't mean anybody's showing up to use it. You got to do all the rest of it, too. All right, any more questions? Conversation? Directions to in and out? Anyone bring cupcakes? If you really do love cupcakes, there's a place about 2 blocks back called Yummy Cupcakes. I had the chocolate and vanilla. It was pretty yummy. Like, I have pretty high cupcake standards, and so it's not like the best cupcake I've ever had, but it was yummy. We went because now you guys are just watching me ramble. One of the guys in the OSCON booth said to me, you know what I really want? I want a root beer cupcake. How come nobody makes a root beer cupcake? I'm like, surely, that's got to be a thing. Somebody somewhere makes a root beer cupcake. And so I Googled root beer cupcakes, Pasadena, and it's like, it's 2 blocks away. We can go. Sadly, they're not making root beer cupcakes right now, but that is a thing. Ooh. Beautiful open. Ding, 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 we have a winner. Is it .org? .com. Boom. Give that man a cupcake. There you go, beautiful open. Sweet. High five, guy who needs users. What's your project? Maybe we have users for you here. That is a problem. Perhaps you recall the slide, talk to people. Okay, well, what will your project do one day? So like, sort of like Amazon wishlist where it deletes it when somebody buys it, or hides it. Right, yeah. Sweet, but you could use it like all over the place. You know what, so I'm just gonna start telling you features that I want, if that's cool. One of my friends posted on Facebook this morning, I hadn't realized that this no longer existed. If you remember, Amazon used to have this thing called listables or something where people would be like, top 10 books where children are crying on page 3 or whatever. Like, there was just a list of all the things, and then you could go add all of this to my wish list. That's not a thing anymore. They got rid of it like 3 years ago. You can't just go make lists of weird things on Amazon anymore. Bummer. You should put that in yours, though, and then we'll go make weird lists of all the things on yours. Does it have a name? Can we use it? What's that? WeGotDibs.com. You said you wanted users. We're going to go use it. So? Simple is good. You told me what it's about. You told me how it works. You did all the things I asked. I'm so happy. Done. Yeah, you want me to put your website in? Zinc? It's pretty. Simplified. Get started. Start quickly. Where, does it tell me somewhere what the heck this does? A little further down, I have to scroll down. That tells me what it does. So the next sentence is not a criticism of that, just that it reminded me of what I did not say about that, which is if it's a sentence. All right, let's see if I can make one up off the top of my head. My project is an enterprise-grade tool for deploying blah, blah. Like, if you can get as many buzzwords as possible into one sentence, I don't know what it does. You have told me nothing. Get rid of all of those words and write a sentence that makes sense. Have a 10-year-old read it, find out if it still makes sense. Although I don't know if my 10-year-old knows what Ruby on Rails is. Five easy commands. Is that true? So, after you've told me it's easy. So, here's the problem with telling me it's easy. If I do this and I fail, you've just called me stupid. And I don't feel good about myself, and I don't want to use your stuff anymore. And that's actually one of the like fundamental rules of documentation. Guy who wanted to write documentation is don't call things simple. Don't call them easy. Don't say, this is so easy, a 5-year-old could do it. Because if I don't do it, now I'm dumber than a 5-year-old, and that sucks. I don't like being dumb.
So this is part of the pitch. Is that it is, how do we say that without being one step from the top?
One thing that you can do is, so there is going to be someone for whom this fails. What do I do if it fails? I did those things. It didn't work. Now what do I do? I left your website. I've gone on somewhere else. I'm putting emeralds on train tracks instead of Ruby on Rails. I have quit software altogether and gone to open a bakery. Cupcakes. I'm making cupcakes. Yeah. Or, like, is there documentation somewhere? It blew up. My computer melted. My laptop is on fire. I'm pretty sure it's your fault. Never underestimate your potential user stupidity. We get lots of emails to the Fedora webmaster address from people who have set up Apache web server, and Apache gets all these emails too, and they're like, why did you hack some of my website? Because, you get that page that just says, congratulations, you set up Apache. Yeah, and so then we get the emails, like, why did you hack some of my website? We didn't. You didn't put up a website. Like, your web server does not psychically download the plans from your head and turn them into HTML. This has never once happened. It would be awesome if it did. I would go back to web development. I would get the USB port in the back of my head. Where to get the helps. I always want more helps because I'm always doing something dumb. The basics. You know what? So this also is a really minor criticism, but I hate when I think we're so accustomed to footers that when a web page just ends like that and there's nothing at the bottom, I think that my browser has barfed, which actually might be the case here. Like, maybe it's just scrolled. Is there anything at the bottom of your website? You guys know what I mean? Like, you're so accustomed to there being something there that says, oh, okay. Are they watching? Hi, team. Hey, he says hi. This guy made me pull up your website and say mean things about it. You should go make cupcakes instead. Anybody else want their websites publicly shamed? Valued, highly valued. Aboutcode.org. I think I might have actually been to this internet. Oh, did I type too? What did I type? That's what I was afraid of. What's happening? That's what I thought I did, was fat finger in the keyboard. So pretty. Simple and automated. Isn't everyone simple and automated now? All right, let's see how long it takes me to find out what you do. Simple idea to keep software provenance data close to the code. A command line-based utility written in Python, released under Apache 2, and is available on GitHub. So I like that you've declared a license, because we didn't talk about that, but declare a license. I care a little bit which one it is, but I don't care a lot as long as you pick one instead of not picking one. Yeah. Does anybody else want to play this game? Like, tell him what he should or shouldn't do with his internet? I see a download link at the top, super handy. Oh, we didn't talk about case studies. This is also a super awesome thing that you can do once you have enough users, especially if, so one just happened yesterday for us that so I'm not the Gluster community manager, and so it's entirely possible that she knew this was going to happen, but Facebook showed up here and gave a massive talk about how they use Gluster and with all sorts of data, and it was super awesome. That's a great success story for us. RedHat.com, obviously, corporation-sized things are full of success stories. It's what they do. There's a lot of negotiation involved. But even for your smaller project, you can, if you're Inkscape, actually, here's a really good example, Blender. Blender can say it was used to make Big Buck Bunny and the other movies that I have long since forgotten the names of that win that competition every year. This is what people do with it. That does impress my 10-year-old. I showed her Big Buck Bunny, and I'm like, oh, look, the software used to make this is right here. You can use this right now, and then maybe you can make the next Big Buck Bunny. If you guys don't know what that is, that probably sounds completely bananas, doesn't it? Have you guys seen Big Buck Bunny? Okay, good. I spend a lot of time speaking at open source conferences, and I work at an open source company, and most of my friends are sort of nerdy vaguely in some way, and then once in a while, the words come out, and I'm like, those words made sense all of the rest of the time, and now people are looking at me like, Big Buck what? We have diagrams. Does everyone think his diagrams are useful? Because I'm kind of looking at this sideways. What's that? Yeah, so me trying to read this is slightly harder than last night when I was trying to read the weakest geek questions like this. About us. As long as your documentation link doesn't go to about us. Support. I can get help. You have the social media links. I can find you. When your stuff goes wrong, I know where to find you. This actually looks pretty good to me. Does anybody else have comments? Yeah, what I can do with it? Yeah, I'm not your target user, and so I'm not the best person to write that, but that is a really good person to write that, is someone who is not you, someone who is not the beginning of the project, but someone who is successfully using it. How do you use it? Why do you use it? What are you doing with it? Yeah. Yeah, not like you specifically. Not like I use Fedora to run my server that plays Minecraft for 47 children in Lower California. Not that level of detail, but yeah, exactly what you're saying is, what does it do? And I also really like features pages with screenshots, because that's where I go when I'm trying to figure out, like, I know this is pretty much what I want, but I'm not sure if you do the one little thing that I really, really wanted to do. I really like features and screenshots. And not teeny tiny screenshots that only make sense if you've already installed and seen the software. If you're going to make teeny tiny screenshots, at least let me click it so I can see a bigger one, which is why the slide about the UX and UI, when I finally found it, has that itty-bitty picture of how the wireframe software works. It's because that's what's on their terrible website screenshots page, is this itty-bitty screenshot that I haven't used the software, but clearly that's what it would look like at a Raspberry Pi screen size if you were making wireframes on a 2.5-inch TFT. I'm full of bad ideas. You need more bad ideas. Do your wireframes on a 2.5-inch screen. All right, anybody else? Well, thank you all for coming. You can go have In-N-Out and cupcakes.